Mike Pompeo, the head of the CIA and Trump's pick or nominee to be his Secretary of State, has apparently visited North Korea and spoken to officials there. Now, it's unclear if there is any real result from that meeting, but Trump, of course, is bragging about it, and in the middle of doing so, tweeted something that was inaccurate. So let's read his tweet and I'll tell you what is inaccurate. Mike Pompeo met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea last week. Meeting went very smoothly and a good relationship was formed. Details of summit are being worked out now. Denuclearization will be a great thing for world, but also for North Korea. Okay, so the part of that tweet that was not correct had to do with the timing. So according to White House officials who spoke with the Washington Post, Pompeo actually met with the North Korean dictator over Easter weekend. That was more than 2 weeks ago. People are giving him a hard time about that mistake. But I gotta be honest with you, when you look at Trump as a whole and all the other things he's tweeted in the past, this is a small error.
Yeah, it's unsurprising that he had no idea when the meeting happened. He doesn't do his homework, et cetera. But we've been through that. Yes, in the Trump world, this is a tiny error compared to the gigantic mistakes he normally makes, including in this case. To me, the much more interesting part was him blurting out that we're having very high-level meetings.
Yeah, that was the part I was about to get to. So reporters were trying to dig around and ask about this meeting because yesterday, Trump had bragged about how there are meetings happening with North Korean officials at very high levels. And so of course that's vague and people wanted to know what's going on. And when reporters would ask, they were basically told, we don't discuss the CIA and the director's travel. And then Trump tweets this today and essentially goes against what what other White House officials had told the media. So these are all things to take into consideration. Again, yet another example of Trump going back and forth on certain things, the White House going back and forth on certain things.
Yeah, no, the guy's such a child. I grow tired of saying it, but you can't normalize how stupid he is. So all of the adults go, okay, now on an issue, look, and by the way, on the substance of this, in terms of North Korea negotiations with South Korea, I love it. And so I'm not against Trump's policy, and such as it is for today, okay? But you gotta call it like it is. So Trump, all the adults go, hey, now this is delicate. We wanna execute this policy in a correct way so that we can actually get to peace. So please don't tell people that the head of our CIA and the guy you nominated to be our Secretary of State is going and has personally met with Kim Jong-un. Don't even talk about how he's like, oh, okay, got it, not talking about it. Goes in front of the press, oh, you won't believe what I know. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's very high levels, I can't tell you, but very, very high levels. What did you think people were gonna do? They're gonna ask, what high levels, what are you talking about? And then the next morning they're like, they put out statements. The White House puts out statements. No. There's these rumors are not exactly right and blah blah blah. And then the next morning he's like, oh, I got a great idea. I'm gonna do a tweet. It was Mike Pompeo, and he met with Kim Jong-un. Even when he's right, he finds a way to screw it up so royally.
Right, and again, even when he's right, don't get too excited because you don't know how long he's gonna remain on the right side of the issue. Now, look, I am happy that the approach toward North Korea has changed considerably because not too long ago, Trump was tweeting out things toward Kim Jong-un, making fun of his physical appearance, talking about how his nuclear button is bigger than Kim Jong-un's nuclear button, just embarrassing the country as he does. But what he's saying now is good in a diplomatic sense, but he now also kind of comes off as incredibly naive. And this is following the meeting with Pompeo. So I want to read you a quote from Donald Trump. He said, I believe there's a lot of goodwill. They do respect us, meaning North Korea. We are respectful of them.
Okay. He called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man before. He said that that was the famous line about how we're gonna have fire and fury and use power like the likes of which the world has never seen before. He basically threatened to nuke them before. He called the government of North Korea cruel and barbaric, which is true, by the way, right? Now he's like, oh, they said some nice things about me. They respect me, so I show a little respect back, okay? oh, we're led by a total imbecile.
He is the easiest person to manipulate when you really think about it. Because all you need to do if you want to manipulate him and you want to get something out of him is just compliment him.
That's
right?
it. It's
just
that
say
simple.
positive things about him, say that you support him, never try to cross him, never give the appearance that you have ambitions to replace him. You'll be fine, you'll get what you want. In fact, the leader of Japan is, kind of doing this balancing act right now because he wants to ensure that these tariffs that Trump is imposing on, other countries that do trade with us don't affect his country. He doesn't want Japan to be impacted. And so, he's having all these calls and these meetings with him, even though it might not be politically savvy to do so, considering how the US is approaching North Korea right now.
So, okay, more context on that.
Yeah.
Every part of this is amazing. So, Prime Minister Abe goes to Mar-a-Lago, spends 2 days with Donald Trump. Trump, in the middle of it, announces that Pompeo is going to meet personally with Kim Jong-un. The government of Japan is not in favor of that.
Right.
So Abe's like, what? You guys are meeting with the North Koreans? Okay, no, yeah, of course everything's gonna be fine. He's like, what are you gonna do with this guy? But he needs to make sure that they are not included in the sanctions. So he has to sit there and kiss Donald Trump's ass. It's so humiliating. And so he goes out and he's like, oh, Mr. Trump, Donald, you have been fantastic. It is your great courage and leadership that has brought this to a good situation that we're in now. Oh, somebody help me, right? So, because they all have to appease the man-child, otherwise he's going to do something stupid and break all the furniture. So, I want to go back to one other quote from Trump on North Korea, and then get to what should we actually do. Earlier, he had said, without us and without me in particular. I guess you would have to say that you wouldn't be discussing anything, including the Olympics, which would have been a failure. So he's saying that North and South Korea, which are now discussing a peace treaty, so it's right now they're in an armistice, so the war never technically ended. Trump, of course, said nobody knows that. Okay, most people don't know that, and it is an interesting fact, but people who are in politics know it, people who are president of the United States know it, right? But of course, he just found out. He's like, did you know? Nobody knows. That the war didn't actually end, it's in an armistice.
Oh,
so they're discussing a peace treaty, that's great news. But what does Trump have to do? Oh, they couldn't have done it without me in particular.
No.
They wouldn't have discussed anything, they wouldn't even have had the Olympics together.
But they did it despite you. Because his rhetoric was so terrifying that leaders in South Korea were like, okay, let's find a way to de-escalate this situation. South Korea had to be the adult in the room and get into direct talks with North Korea. So I guess he's kind of right. Yeah, you're so unhinged and unstable that other world leaders have to basically take a leadership role and in the international, way and reach out to North Korea on their own. I mean, he's crazy, and it's scary when you consider how unstable he is when it comes to these incredibly important issues.
Republicans, it really doesn't bother you that he says things like the Olympics would have been a failure without him? Like, if you had a person like that in your real life who went around bragging about things they had nothing to do with and made grandiose, preposterous statements, like a guy doesn't come to your wedding and then he goes, oh, your wedding would have been a failure without me. You'd be like, who are you? You're like the worst person in the world. I brought you and your wife together. You don't even know my wife. The guy's an egomaniac. And you read that stuff and go, oh yeah, Olympics failure without Donald Trump. Really? That's what you've succumbed to? That's what you're degraded to? All right, finally on the policy. Look, we've tried this before with North Korea in the 1990s and then recently, both times when Trump said, so stupid to talk to North Korea, they always renege on deals, don't talk to them. Now, he's gonna do something unprecedented and go meet with the North Korean leader. But despite all that, I say yes. So I want North and South Korea to do a peace treaty, and North Korea promises they're gonna denuclearize. Do I trust them? Hell no. They have reneged on all the deals. But you know what? I was happy that Bush didn't. In fact, anybody remembers all the way back then, that was one of the things I used to always give Bush credit for. It was like among two things, right? His amount of money he gave to helping AIDS in Africa, which was really great on Bush, and the fact that he didn't go to war with North Korea and at least tried peace. Because look, if we go to war, we know what happened. Millions of people die. If you keep delaying, there is some chance that we can peaceably remove the dictator in North Korea and that awful government. So I love the South and North Korea are trying to get to some sort of peace deal. If Trump is in favor of that, great, wonderful. No matter how ridiculous he is and how he blunders his way into it, what I'm afraid of is that something's gonna go wrong, and instead of kissing his ass, someone is going to accidentally insult him when he goes to meet Kim Jong-un, and then he's gonna try to prove he has a bigger button. So, these are terrifying times. It could go in a positive direction, and if it does, I'll give him a lot of credit. Or it could go in a disastrous direction, so brace for impact. If you like this video, bless your heart. We got a lot more where that came from. We do a full show every day, Monday through Friday. Come enjoy it ad-free by becoming a member, tytnetwork.com/join.